Hello guys and welcome to the second video of the week number 5. So remember that we were discussing certain things about the editions and study guides. So this is going to be a material that is support or that is going to help students to both reading independently. So probably they are going to need this for reading the book on their own, but also it will be a support element for when you are doing any activity in class, when they are developing a worksheet, or we're doing something similar to that. Okay, so we had already mentioned certain things about the glossaries and how they are almost always fundamental, right? Let's say that if your book doesn't require a glossary, I mean, the potential of such book as a tool to teach something new is questionable, right? You say, no, this book is really easy, so I don't need a glossary. So I don't know if it was a good selection, right? Because you really wanted to to teach students or to have create conditions for students to learn something new, and if starting from vocabulary is not there, well, question yourself, okay? So about glossary, we have all these glossary of words and expressions. We also talk about these possible summaries or discussion questions. I think I wanted to show you a little bit about that as well. Let me see if I have any of those over here. Yeah, for example, I have here in this edition, again, that I know that is reversed, but what it says over there is questions for discussion, right? And there are questions such as, who is the villain of Oliver Twist and why? Then again, I mean, the questions are really open. It's not like to say one word and that will be the answer. No, it is a lot of different things that we can discuss. So the question, as I mentioned before, should be open enough in order to have a discussion. No. There are a lot of different things over here, right? Like there's even like a text that sort of discusses this, right? For example, it says a possible answer to that question is this. It says, what do you think of the hero Oliver? How could he be so angelic and heroic given his environment? Yes. What does Dickens imply about morality through Oliver? Is it born in a person or acquired through circumstance? Does that philosophy hold up in the novel's other characters? So you see, there are a lot of different questions that are not, whose answers are not, which answers are not only saying a location or talking about a particular event, but in which you require to have understood the chapter or whatever you were able to read. Yes. Sorry, those were the other questions. I got lost a little bit on my tab. So what I wanted to share with you was the answers that the book proposes. For example, as this discussion now, it says Dickens clearly protests poor laws in this novel, and yet he sometimes reinforces negative stereotypes about the poor through Fagin and his cohorts. Yes, so that is like one possible answer that is provided. Of course, is these are questions for discussion? Well, that's something that you can do. So I really recommend these sort of books if you're able to get your hands on them, because it saves you a lot of work, right? Somebody else already helped you with those discussion works and questions, etc. Then again, if you don't have any of those, well, it's your responsibility as a teacher to do that. Before going into the discussion, I really recommend to create your own material, guys. And if you, I know that it's tiring, that it's time consuming, that somehow you, when you're doing those sort of things, you say, oh, man, they don't pay me enough for doing this, and I understand that frustration, and I understand that feeling, but make sure that if you create proper materials, right, original materials from your own creation, and if you do that properly, then you can use that same material for years and years to come. And it is not about repetition, yes? It is about being able to adapt this into new groups new activities. Like I have done, for example, I have a web quest that probably we will work about that at the end of this course that I created for when I was studying my master's many years ago. And well, it was well done. I dedicated a long time for it. I spent about, I would say, almost 2 weeks working on that because it was one of my final projects. And I think I consider that it was well done, and I have used that activity many times for school students, for university students, for some institute students. I just adapt here and there, and I am able to do it in that way. So if you prepare a study guide or an edition for all this, I'm sure that you're going to save a lot of work in the future, right? You already have the material. Let's say it's yours. For example, in this case, probably I can make photocopies out of this book. Yes, but then this has copyright. So if at some point the author, well, not Charles Dickens because he's dead, but the person who adapted the guide decides to sue me, well, you may say, well, that never happens in Colombia. It might happen, right? So that would be problematic for me. So that's why I always like invite you guys to create your own material. For sure, it's going to save you lots of work. Well, we talk about the second summaries and questions. We talk about the biography of the author. So let's go on with the next component, that is a discussion of local customs and background relevant to the text. So remember that precisely a week ago we were discussing and checking on certain aspects that you require to analyze or to know previously in order to completely enjoy or understand the book. Yes, a lot of different things. We talk about political circumstances, historical, customs, habits, gastronomy, values. Well, a lot of different things. You can go back to that video and verify some of it, right? So if you already determined that there are certain things, 2, 3, 5, whatever, that are fundamental in order to understand the book, so you need to make that available for students. One more time, it can be really classical and write a paragraph on each of the 3 items that are essential, and in your own words you can sort of anticipate that and make some sort of clarification in order to be working on it. Now my wife is going down the stairs. Hello, sweetie. And well, sorry, I got lost on her beauty. So I was saying, you can just clarify this in a couple of paragraphs. What you can do as well is, as I mentioned before, as I give that options, for example, for the biography or for the summaries or for the glossary, you can maybe share with them a video that is already done and that you can find in YouTube, or a couple of videos that are pretty short, nothing longer than 2 or 3 minutes, so they can check it out in a more audiovisual way, right? That's a possibility. There are podcasts, there are, as I mentioned before, fragments of movies, of TV series. They are even sometimes interactive, like games that are free, that are freeware that doesn't have copyright, so you can use it. It really depends on the nature of your public, and somehow their resources, because you also have to think about that. Yes, I cannot ask them to go to a library if they don't have a library around. I cannot ask them to go and connect into a very sophisticated platform if their internet service is deficient or they don't have nothing at all, right? So try to identify these factors and act accordingly, right? Now again, we're trying to determine here which ones are like mandatory and which ones are not. So I think a glossary, it's almost always a mandatory thing. Maybe these things about the summaries maybe or may not, but definitely the questions should be there. The biography of the author only in the case of let's say it was completely relevant, otherwise we can omit that. And then we have this discussion of local customs or any background information that is required to understand the book. I think that this is in most of the cases mandatory as well. Like you're supposed to do that to contextualize a little bit. Then again, there are different tools. I mean, you can, as I mentioned, do that. But if it's something too general, so maybe only dedicating 2 or 3 minutes to tell that yourself, yes, to the students, it will be enough, right? Just to have a general context, and that will be enough. So please think in a way of doing that. But in most of the cases, it's going to be necessary. Finally, let's talk about a critical analysis of the work. What is that? Well, very simple. Just sharing with your students the impressions of other people towards the book, right? So what other people have said about the book, if it's positive or negative, if it's somehow mixed, right? So again, this is one of the components of the study guide that may be omitted if you want. So if you think that that is not completely essential, that let's say it's not relevant for them, so you can omit it. But sometimes, like listening good comments from what you are going to read is good, right? Like think about how many times you have listened. I mean, you have gone to watch a movie, or you have listened to a certain musician, or watch a particular series just because everybody else was saying it was okay. Yes, that it was good, that you should see that. So think about the potential of influence, right? Again, this can be done in different ways. The most traditional one was, well, read a review about it. But remember, we're trying to skip or to minimize the amount of pre-reading that is required. For sure, sometimes we're going to require pre-reading of the book, but let's do not add another 20 pages to what the student has to read, because by the time that he reads the book, he will be tired already. Yes? So find some other alternatives. There are different ways, such as reading a short review, such as an interview that was done to a critic, in which he speaks good or bad or regular about the book. Again, we have some like YouTube reviews. They are pretty popular these days. Somebody who just speaks about how good or bad is a movie, or in this case a book, or an author. And well, there are different ways. Now, if you decide that you're going to include literary criticism, try to think what's the best moment. Are you going to do it before? Yes, so they have a general idea of what they are going to read. This has pros and cons, no? So having something, know a little bit something before the starting reading, it might be good, because you may feel interested, because you might feel somehow attracted, but also it may be like a spoiler, or maybe it could be like a predisposition. Yes, if the critic says that this book is amazing, and then you start reading it and you find it boring as hell, it's going to be difficult to say to your teacher, I didn't like this book, or I think that it's boring, because you have this weight of the critic saying that it's wonderful and magnificent, and you will feel like a complete stupid saying that it is not. Yes? So maybe that would be a factor against doing that before. Should you do it after? Sure, that's a possibility as well. You can compare what professional critics say about the book and your opinion, and that will be fine. Yes. Or simply we have some other alternatives, like reading, doing it sometimes, or doing it during the process. Okay. But that's up to you, and that's up to what you consider is best, taking into account your public and your somehow your purpose or your goal with this specific book. Okay, So guys, as I mentioned before, well, we're done over here with the study guides and editions. So the assignment of this week is going to be this, okay? You can do it in groups of maximum 2 people, okay? No more, only couples, or individually. That's up to you, okay? So, what you're going to do is that with the book that you're reading, in case you're going to be working in couples, so you select one of the 2 books, and you are going to prepare a study guide for such book. I know that you have not finished reading the book, but this is the week number 5. I am expecting that you have already read at least 45-50 pages of the book. I mean, if you read 10 pages a week, it will be more than enough time in order to do it, okay? So you prepare the study guide. What should include this study guide? Well, mandatorily, it should include a glossary. Of course, this glossary, if you are reading, if you have read more or less 50 pages of the book already, or 40 something, well, it must include a minimum of 10 words. Yes? So you should include this, a minimum of 10 words or expressions, in the format that you consider that is like most more convenient for your possible students, okay? As I mentioned, a description, a picture, a combination of pictures and words, etc. Okay, so that's the first part. It must include mandatorily a glossary. It must include mandatorily one of these at least. Yes, either a summary of like the first, depending on your book, it may be by chapters, by episodes, or simply a long little summary of what you've done, right? Or some pre-questions for the discussion, right? So depending on the format, as I mentioned, we may be talking about a really short summary per chapter. Yes, so it could be 2 or 3 sentences of the chapters that compose the book until the part that you're reading. Or it may be, I mean, sometimes the books have no chapters, so they just go straight forward. So you can just divide these in moments. Yes, let's say important events that happen throughout the story until the part that you have read so far. And if you're going to deal with questions, the other option, well, the idea is that you have at least 4 or 5 questions for discussions, okay? You don't need to include the answers, but please remember that the questions should be open enough and very well prepared, so they can somehow redound into a discussion that you will have in class eventually. So those 2 are mandatory. Then the next one is a biography of the author. This will be optional. Yes. Now there are, as I mentioned, some books that definitely require this component. So if that is the case, well, you will have to include it as well. Again, please try to look for something that is adequate to the public that you are going to be addressing to. So write a short biography yourself of 5 sentences or so, or look for one online, and of course give the correct references, I mean the given references, or if you're going to use a YouTube video, if you're going to record a podcast, well, whatever you want, but that is relevant, short, and consistent, okay? So that 3rd point, a biography, is something optional. Then the next one, again, is mandatory. Like some of them, some of your books may require a really short discussion on the background. The media, the instrument that you're going to use for this, again, is up to you. I have given you like different options throughout the video, so you decide how to put it. Like if you are going to write a short summary on each item, you are going to select 2 or 3 aspects that are really important. If you are going to use a video, well, I don't know, different things like that, and that must be included in there. of course, depending on the nature of your book, it will be shorter or longer for you. Finally, critical analysis of the work. I am suspecting that nobody is going to include this, but then again, it's optional. So if you want to include it, do it. Otherwise, just leave it aside of this report. Okay. So probably you might be wondering right now. So how long or how many pages I'm supposed to be, or I'm supposed to produce? Okay. Well, that is entirely up to the type of book that you have. Okay. I would say, just a random calculation, that everybody must have minimum a page. Yes, because you will have over there like the definitions of the glossary, but if it has images, for example, so it will be much longer, right? If you're going to include the summaries, well, that covers a little bit of the page, right? But if it's a link to a video, well, it will be just that, right? If we have the list of the questions, well, it may be shorter. Well, the idea is that, let's say that the standard measurement that I ask you for this is 1 page, one of the traditional size of Word, but it's entirely up to you, right? Like more than the extension or more than covering pages, more pages or less pages, what I'm interested in is that you're able to effectively create a tool that is going to help students to read and that will help students to complete your work over there, right? Like to have an assistant or a companion when they're working in your class. Okay, so that's it. Remember, 2 people, minimum 1 page with all of these different things in whatever modality that you find. If you can use your own material, great. If you are going to use external material, please always quote. Yes, always say this was not prepared by me. I found it online at this address, or this is the author, or something like that. That is fundamental, right? Because remember that this is a study guide, and it is supposed to be somehow respectful of these different things. Now, finally, please determine your population. Okay, so create this study guide having a specific population in mind. So if you go to the slide number 43, you will find a list of possible populations. These are the most common ones that I could think of, but probably you have another specific one. So you will find over there elementary school, high school, university first semester, so it means that the command of the language is not so good. Yes, university intermediate levels, university advanced levels, a language center, or adults. Yes, so those are like different groups that I think that are relevant for this exercise. So you select one, and you are going to prepare this study guide having in mind that group of people. I would recommend that you think it through, that you sit down and select this consciously, and that you continue working with the same study group, the same audience, for the future activities that we have. In that way, you are going to be feeding your portfolio, whatever thing that you have to accumulate information, and by the end of the semester, when we're supposed to have the project and the lesson plan, everything is going to be almost ready. Yes, that's my suggestion or my invitation. Now, if you want to change population every time that we do an activity, it's fine, because and that is also somehow a good way to try different populations and see what is the best for your book. There is another option, but then again, that will make you somehow less effective in the possibility of accumulating works about the same population. But that's completely up to you. Okay, so that's my suggestion. Now, within those groups that I propose in there, there may be more specific groups. For example, when we say university, we can think about careers such as yours that are completely dedicated to English. That's a possibility. Or some other careers in which English is more of a side content, such as, I don't know, architecture, math, or biology, right? You can think about that, or you can think about some specific things such as a bilingual school, a public school, a private school, or even you can include some categories that are not there. For example, a private lesson. Just you're teaching somebody in her house. You have only one student or two students per class. So those are possibilities. Okay. Anyways, hope it is clear enough. Let's say that this is that is why I just assigned one homework for this week, because I know that it may take some time, especially if you're doing this on your own individually, or if you're going to do it in couples. I think that it takes more thinking than actually writing. Yes, but the thinking part may be long. So well, that's why I consider that is good enough to do it in this way. So well, thank you very much for the attention. Hopefully it is clear enough. If you have any question, anything additional that you require for advisory, please do not hesitate to let me know, and I'll be more than glad to assist you. So thanks a lot, and have a great day. Bye bye, hugs.